IB Nation Sports Talk is up and rolling on a stormy, nasty South Bend area Wednesday, along with Vince DeDario, who's been bailing his basement with his kids for a day and a half. I'm Sean Stiers.
It's the first time that very thankful that I had many children because they all had a job to do.
Nice assembly line.
It was. Right. It was. So, it is what it is. But here we are, ready to go.
Yes. Thank you for being here. More so today than ever. I didn't realize how crappy your day was until we both logged in and we were talking to each other before we started. Hit that like button, as Joe reminds everybody. Great to have you here. It is Mailbag Day, so that means as you file into the chat, you enter your little question about Notre Dame football or whatever it happens to be, and we will do our best to answer them. I had one that I wanted to start with that not necessarily a question, but a submission. The thread that I posted on the Champions Lounge for people to submit for yesterday's show for the top Notre Dame plays of the last 25 years. Someone said David Grimes' diving catch against Stanford in 2007 should be on there too, even if the replay official didn't think it was a catch.
I was going to say, wasn't that a not catch?
That is the catch 22, is it was ruled incomplete. So, I mean, it would have been a great catch. And I remember watching that. That was like early days of instant replay.
Yes, very early. Yeah.
I don't know if you remember. He was fully extended.
Yep.
His hands were on the ground, and so you could see like the ball move, but you couldn't actually see in the replay if the ground caused the movement. Right. All you could see was movement, and his hands are right there. But they ruled after it was ruled complete on the field. The replay said it was incomplete. It's total garbage and total early misuse of instant replay. That definitely should have been a catch. There was nothing in the replay to say that needed to be overturned. All you could see was the ball move, but you couldn't see if it was his hands or the ground that caused the movement.
Yeah, bad, not great. And now again, not to throw everybody under the bus or whatever, but you're right. It was the early days of instant replay, and they were still trying to figure it out. And to be honest with you, and we've talked about this before, I still don't think college has a freaking clue what they're doing when it comes to replay,
I don't either.
It works and all.
That's worst case scenario is what that one was.
They have no idea what they're doing.
I know.
And I am shocked.
They're just guessing and feeling their way through it all the time.
Like nobody knows what, forcible contact to the head, targeting. Nobody knows what that is. Because that changes week to week. Nobody knows how you can challenge or when you can challenge or when it's an automatic challenge. Like, I just do not understand why they don't just go by the NFL model.
Yeah.
It's so simple. It's so
Throw a challenge flag. Throw a challenge flag. You get a couple challenges. You win one. You get to keep your next one. Whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's
so simple. And college is just all over the map. I mean, they're all over the map. And I don't know. I guess different like all NFL stadiums are equipped, with the same technology and all that. But high-end college football is equipped with all the same technology too. So that can't be an excuse anymore. They even have replay at the D2 level, believe it or not. So
wow.
I know because I saw it when we were there doing a visit. They have a tent set up, and I think they just watch I don't know what they watch under there, but there's a tent set up with like a monitor and a laptop. So they do it. I don't know what the rules are. I'll find out soon enough. But if they can do it, then college
football. That's got to be hard though, man, because
it has to be. It has to be.
Most of those games are going to be like a streaming setup, I would imagine. So you're not going to have the best camera angles, and you're not going to be zoomed in the way
I don't know what the rules are. What you can challenge and things like that. You know what I mean? Because most of those places are just going to have one camera set up, and it's going to be up in the press box. It's going to be the wide view, and you just roll with it,
Right.
But, I guess we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. Let's get to the mailbag. Andre asks, if Notre Dame had to join a conference because of the college football playoff, which conference would you want them to commit to?
I mean, selfishly, I would want them to create their own. Just pillage the best teams out of all the conferences and create your own. If you're asking which one they should join that currently exists, I mean, obviously the ACC is the one that makes the most sense. That's where the rest of their sports are. And I believe they are contractually obligated to join the ACC if it comes to that. So that would be the choice. I do not want them in the Big Ten. I said it on another show, and people gave me crap, and I don't care. Big Ten's boring football for the most part. I'm good. Not that the ACC has great football, but right now there's just so many boring teams in the Big Ten. So it's a big pass for me. So the ACC would be number one. I don't want them a part of the SEC. That just doesn't fly real well with me. Craig D says the ACC or the Big 12. Okay, I could put the Big 12 at number 2. I have no problem with that. I would avoid the Big 10 and the SEC at all costs. That's what I would do.
My first choice would be the ACC because, look, you're already there. You're already playing a partial schedule. It's been part of your deal. I think that if that happened, then the ACC is also going to get a better media deal at that point if they've got Notre Dame as a full-fledged member. That's obviously why a big part, like Jim Phillips, would very much love Notre Dame to become a full-time member of the ACC. You've already got some built-in rivalries. This Clemson thing is going. Miami, Florida State are natural teams that Notre Dame can compete against as well. And my second would actually be the Big Ten, and it's only because 2 reasons. One, we're going to talk about this in rapid fire, actually. The Big Ten is not nearly as difficult as everybody makes it out to be.
Completely agree.
So, we've gone through some of these schedules when we've done the season over under win totals for teams like Penn State and Michigan, and Purdue still has the toughest schedule of anybody. Those Big Ten schedules are not nearly as tough as they make them out to be. And 2, it would also, because of the fact that you have USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington in there, that could that would be good for Notre Dame to kind of keep that West Coast. If you could go to just one of those every year. Like if you were traveling out there, whatever, or even if it's every other year, that would benefit Notre Dame. The Big Ten, because of those additions, is more of a national conference. So I would go ACC first and Big Ten second.
That's fair. And it's a really good point to as a pro for the Big Ten.
And it would also potentially help keep the USC rivalry intact. I forgot about that.
That's fair. So, the pro of the Big Ten is that you'd get the Big Ten clout of being in that conference and still be able to win the vast majority of your games. Because the Big Ten is so top heavy. They're so top heavy. There's good teams at the top. There's not much of a middle, and then you've got the rest. That's how the Big Ten feels to me. And I know we've got Big Ten, big people, Big Ten in our chat. I'm just not a fan of the Big Ten. But
as Craig says, BC and Pittsburgh in the ACC. So you've got some kind of some of the old school second tier rivals in the ACC. That makes sense. They being around with basketball and stuff like that. They haven't been as attractive.
Right.
Those kind of games with either the men or the women, and the men, Boston College has become the de facto ACC rival, and it's just kind of
Can you imagine Big Ten people? So they're all the Big Ten people. Most of them hate Notre Dame, right? But they all know monetarily, if you bring Notre Dame in, they're going to make more money, right?
Yeah.
And the complaining that you would get when Notre Dame comes in and they just start winning all the time. They would be so mad. Oh, you just joined our conference and you win all the time. The complaining and the moaning and the griping.
I mean, seriously, if Notre Dame was in the Big Ten and had a schedule like USC, Oregon, Penn State, Michigan have this year, it's really not that much different than the way Notre Dame's is structured. Your schedule, for the most part, comes down to 2 tough games and how you navigate those. And even if you lose those games and you're competitive, I'm saying this worst case, we've talked about it. Once they expand the playoff to 16 teams, you're still going to be in playoff consideration if you have 2 losses at the end of the year.
100%. And I mean, do we really? I realize the question isn't asking, saying that we should join, or it's if you have to. Okay.
Right.
So I totally respect that. I just can't imagine a schedule where you got to play Rutgers and Minnesota and Iowa and hard pass, man.
Well, but is it that much better though in the ACC where you're playing Syracuse and Wake Forest and the
Carolinas.
Difference is
you only got to play 5 ACC teams.
No, but we're saying if they're a full-fledged member, I thought.
Fair enough.
So because obviously it changes if you're a full-fledged member. So no, you're absolutely right. Right now, as Notre Dame, and you've only got to play 5. There's nothing wrong with that at all. How would you up your ideal portal schedule? Is what Joe asked. So are you saying like
setup? Like how would we set it up? Like what would the calendar look like?
Where would the portal windows be? Is that what
I think that's what he's saying.
Okay.
See, the thing is there's pros and cons to all of it, right? There's pros and cons to having it in December, right? So you can get people on board so that they'll be there in the spring. There are, but at the same time, if you're, preparing for the postseason, how are you splitting your time and your energies and all that? Then you've got the early spring window, like before spring ball starts, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it's already too late for kids to go to your school, right? And then you've got the late spring window, which makes some sense because now you've at least been able to go through the spring and you figure out, well, if I'm going to be a contributor here or not. And then you can kind of get after it. So I think in my head, I like the December window, but people have made arguments for the late spring window that make a lot of sense to me. Ideally as a coach, you want to get as many of your pieces into the spring into the spring practice window as you can. So that's why December makes sense. But I don't know, man. Like I could be swayed either direction. You know what I mean? Like I really, really could. I don't know. Go ahead. What do you got?
Well, this is the coaches are supposed to be discussing this again. It's not going to be enacted, I don't think, for this year, but more likely next year if they actually change it. But it sounds like the majority of coaches like a January window, so it's like, I don't know if the full window would be in January or not, but they're talking about,
early?
More like early and into mid-January. And that
they just still enroll, I guess.
It's just, I don't know how you do that because of the fact that you've got 16 teams playing in the playoff. And I guess, you've still got half of those teams playing in January, theoretically, after the first round is done. So it's like, January still doesn't make sense to me because of the, like what Toots is saying, the semester starts in mid-January.
Correct. Usually in the middle of the month.
And that's why the spring just makes more sense to me. And I realize coaches want it. It's like, get it over with, get your guys in and all that kind of stuff. But you're going to have guys showing up on campuses a week or two late if they're in the playoffs and all that different kind of stuff and still figuring out portal things and all that. It just seems like it would be easier to do it. And again, I realize best case scenario, you want your full team on campus going through spring practice together. That obviously
that's ideal if you're a coach.
Yeah. But at the same time, because of everything else that's going on in January, or in December, that's why you push it to January. And it just feels like if everyone's under the same set of rules, it feels to me like an April date after spring practice is better because that still gives everybody a chance to go through spring with their teams and figure out, do I fit in here or not? But at the same time, this is maybe just a giant cop out. I just don't think that there is an ideal one or the other when it comes to this. Something's going to suffer one way or the other if you go to just one portal window.
100%. I mean, because there's going to be guys that want to ride it out in the spring and see if they can, become a major contributor to their team. And so having that window after spring makes a lot of sense. It feels like a lot of schools are done with their portal stuff for the most part, though, going into spring practice. So it's like the coaches obviously want it earlier. You know what I mean? The kids probably want it later. So it's just a matter of how it works. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to put myself in that position. If I'm a player and I'm thinking about jumping into the portal, am I leaving my team if they're in the playoffs, in December or January? Am I leaving my team to go into the portal? Like, that seems odd, but at the same time, plausible. You know what I mean? Would Pat Coogan have jumped into the portal in December if that was the only window?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like literally because he was a starter. You know, him and Rocco, they were both starters on this team throughout the playoff run. And then as soon as they had an opportunity, they jumped into the portal and headed elsewhere because they knew that their spot wasn't going to be guaranteed for next year, right? They wanted a guaranteed starting position, so they jumped in the portal. I have no problem with that. But if there's only one window and it's in December or January, you just lost 2 starters in the midst of a run.
Here's an idea, because they're talking about adding these OTA style practices in the future, like in the summer, where it's like it's like 6 non-contact practices basically that you could do in June around the same time that you're doing your summer workouts and stuff like that. What if you said every college football team, you can have 2 weeks of spring practice that has to be done by March 31st, and then you open the portal for 2 weeks in April, and then you give them 2 more weeks that they can actually practice.
There you go. I like that, actually.
And then, you're doing your summer stuff the rest of June, and then you've got training camp obviously open up late July, early August.
I actually kind of dig that, actually. You're using those.
I think it would make more sense
as a benefit,
Yeah.
Because most schools are done at the end of April, like as far as with their semesters and stuff like that, they're done. So you put the portal there, then they can figure it out. They go home for a couple of weeks. Now they're back on campus in June, and now you can practice as well. I actually don't have a problem with that.
It just seems like because then you're kind of getting the best of both worlds, and you're keeping guys on campus. They're getting, like I said, that opportunity in the March practices potential, to show what they can do, kind of where they fit in. If they don't feel like they're going to be a fit, you've got the transfer portal in April, and then once everyone gets to where they're going to go, you've got the new guys coming in with the veterans, and you have 2 more weeks together in June to go through some practices.
And you
keep the contact as minimal as possible, probably in June.
And look, I understand that this probably isn't at the forefront of the decision-making process, but they are still student athletes, and it gives these guys another opportunity to get their degree wherever they're at with an extra semester on campus, as opposed to bailing for the spring semester. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That kind of checks a lot of the boxes there, Sean Stiers. I think you need to give Pete Bavacqua a call.
All right.
Because he's a player. We know this. He's a player in the whole thing.
Put this on your agenda.
Yeah, exactly. Like, look, Pete, I got something to tell you.
See how far that goes. Craig says, wouldn't it be advantageous to name a quarterback starter sooner than later so he gets more first-team reps?
So there was another one here from Swan Dong as well, and I'll just read it. He just says, when would you want Notre Dame to announce a starter at quarterback? So I think Craig was kind of responding to that one as well.
Gotcha.
So I will unstar that one. But Craig, the earlier the better, obviously. I mean, that's what you would like to do. That's really not up to the coaching staff. I mean, it's kind of up to the players as far as what the play is like. I mean, if there's a clear and obvious starter between CJ and Kenny, they'll name a starter. Like, I don't foresee Marcus Freeman doing the whole wait till game week thing, name a starter. I just, that doesn't feel to me who he is. I think once the team knows and he knows, he's going to announce it, and it's just going to be what it is. That could be in the first week. That could be after 2 weeks, because usually it's 2 weeks of camp and then 2 weeks of prep. That's usually how it works. I could see it being anywhere from the end of the first week to the beginning of the prep week, right? So 1 to 2 weeks in, that's kind of like the window that I'm looking at. And it could be anywhere in there. And that just depends on what these guys do at practice,
Yep. That's exactly it. It's not going to go any longer than they need it to. Like you said, that's why when they've had some of these quarterback competitions that have gone into training camp in the past, by the end of the first week, they went ahead and named it because it was obvious who it was going to be. And I think that's how it's going to be. If they feel like one of these guys is the clear leader and is the clear guy, they're not going to rob him of any reps. If they truly feel like it's a competitive, close situation, they'll take it as long as they need to. It's why Marcus Freeman has said he doesn't want to put any timeline on it because he wants it to kind of run its natural course and to figure itself out just within the competition, which he loves. Yeah. And I think that makes sense.
And we talked about this a little bit yesterday on the big show, and you want to allow this thing to happen naturally as well, because if you go in with a preconceived notion as to who the starter is and that guy's getting outplayed or whatever the case may be in practice, you're not doing your team. You're doing your team a disservice at that point. You know what I mean? Because they're going to know, like, we got to give more credit to the players. Like, they know who the best players are and they know who they want on the field. Like, there's a difference between having buddies and then having teammates. You know what I mean? And you want your buddy to succeed and all of those things, but you also know who's going to give you the best chance to win. And so you want it to be fairly clear who the guy is that's giving your team the best chance to win. And then you go ahead and you select that guy to be the starter. Because if you go the other direction and you select the other guy because, he's just a favorite of the coaches or whatever, you're not going to have your team where you want them to be. That's happened at Notre Dame before.
You're going to lose everybody is what
and you can't. And then you've got a split locker room and you've got all kinds of issues. And so Marcus, because as Johnny
S3 says, Notre Dame might not announce it, but the team will know when a legit guy.
Absolutely. And emerges. You know what? At the end of the day, that's all that matters. Like, as a media member, of course, we want to know who the starter is so we can talk about it and we can break it down and we can do all of those things. But at the end of the day, if the team knows who it is, Marcus Freeman doesn't give a hoot about if the media or the fans know who it is. It's none of their business.
Back to the conference talk. Mike says Notre Dame is located in Northwest Indiana. We're Big Ten. It's time to stop acting like we're not. It's ridiculous to me. So many natural rivals. We don't play. I'm not as concerned about the natural rival.
And who's concerned about location? Like, Mike, I love you because you are
the conference is all over the place now. Yeah. I mean, obviously there are a lot of
USC,
it is the Big Ten. Like here's a shock. The Big Ten actually started out as a Midwestern conference. Like the farthest east any Big Ten team was I believe Ohio State, because I think Michigan and Michigan State, the natural, but they're a little bit farther to the west, right? Yeah. Yes. So where Columbus is. So that was but look at all, you've got Penn State, you've got Maryland, you've got Rutgers all out there. And then
there are no such thing. There's no such thing as regional.
To me, the bigger attractiveness of the Big Ten now is it is a more national conference, and it's not just consolidated to the Midwest. Yeah. And it, again, if Notre Dame was forced there, even playing a conference schedule in the Big Ten, you're going to hit both coasts, which is good.
That actually makes the Big Ten more feasible. But there's the history of the Big Ten too. And that does come into play. I think that part is probably shrinking as just time goes by and all of that, but there's not a good relationship between Notre Dame and the Big Ten when you go back in history. So and again, I'm not saying that's the majority of the reason, but Notre Dame would have been in the Big Ten. They would have been in the Big Ten. All this conversation would have been moot if the Big Ten would have accepted Notre Dame when they wanted to go in the first place. We don't have to talk about the reasons.
And this rivalry with USC would have never started to begin with.
100%. That's
the whole reason.
Right.
Big Ten
so that's on the Big Ten.
So Rockney said, we're going west, baby. Get on the trains.
That's exactly what happened. So, the Big Ten had every opportunity to have Notre Dame. Here's the other thing. Notre Dame wouldn't have been Notre Dame if they joined the Big Ten back then. So they just would have been another, Big Ten team. So.
Crash this train with the big three games being Miami, A&M, and USC. Which of our starters would not start on those teams? None of them. They would all start. Every Notre Dame starter, both sides of the ball. Lock it up.
Everyone.
Hope there's some Miami fans watching tonight.
Look, here's my honest answer. I don't know enough about every single position for Miami, A&M, and USC right now to say, okay, well, that player is better than Notre Dame's player, so that player wouldn't start, that kind of a thing. I don't know. I don't know the depth chart of those three teams right now on June 18th as we sit here. So I can't make that claim. Notre Dame has a lot of good players. They got a lot of good depth. And I don't know that I would, off the top of my head, trade any of our guys for their guys. How about that?
I know that Notre Dame's roster is going to stack up very favorably.
Correct.
Against all three of them. If you look at the quarterback specifically, most people would probably say you're going to take Carson Beck over a guy who hasn't started before. But and then what is it? Reed down there at A&M, the mobile
Oh
guy
yeah,
that
yeah.
took over.
What has he done? Low, you know what I mean? Like
exactly.
Yeah.
There are going to be some guys like I know Miami's got a pretty good defensive end. It's like each of them is going to have like you said. I don't know the depth chart of of all three of those teams, but I know that Notre Dame fared well. Like for example, Notre Dame fared very well going up against some elite pass rushers. I think there were 3 guys who ended up being drafted in the first round last year that Notre Dame stacked up very well against. So,
yeah, Archer says Bain and Lemon would both start at Notre Dame. Okay. I take your guys' word for it. You guys probably look into this way more closely than I do. I just don't honestly know, to be perfectly honest with you. I focus on Notre Dame, not the opponents until it's time. So
correct.
That's just where I'm at. So I apologize, guys. My depth of knowledge is not as vast as it needs to be to answer that question the way it needs to be answered. And here's the thing. Most people, Tunsa says most people will take Carson Beck. Oh, he said most people will take Carson Beck's cars. Some already have. Okay, that's pretty funny, dude. A lot of national people would take Carson Beck over CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie, and I totally get it. I don't think I would. I'm just saying. I'm just not a huge Carson Beck fan. I just after his last year, he was an interception machine last year at Georgia. Like I want somebody who's going to protect the ball a little bit better, and I think both Kenny Minchie and CJ Carr will do that. So, yeah.
Tom says Miami's Achilles heel is their secondary. Don't think they got that fixed in the offseason. CJ Carr could possibly have a field day. And, I know, look, they brought some guys in the portal. We talked to the Miami reporter last month, and I mean, they're going to try to fix it. How much ground they're able to make up, I don't know, but the Miami guy, David Lake, I think I mentioned this before. He watched the Blue Gold game on Peacock, and his observation was Notre Dame's roster has a lot more just overall talent than what the Miami roster has. So, I mean, his eyeball test says that Notre Dame stacks up pretty well. Tommy Guns, what would you set the line at for Notre Dame wins of 10+ points? He says 7.5.
Okay, so that they'll win over under 7.5 games by 10 or more points. That's the question here.
Let me pull up the schedule here real quick.
Right.
Go through it.
Because last year, it was definitely over. Let's see here. Okay,
Miami. So, I'm going to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M.
I'll put this one in the maybe pile.
Obviously, very close last year.
Right.
I just feel like Notre Dame, again, like athletically, physically, the whole thing.
I just don't want to underestimate Mike Elko.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? Just night game at home, though. Like that place is going to be rocking.
Have they released the spread for that? We know they've released the Miami spread.
It's a great question. It's going to be the first home game at Notre Dame since the IU game. Like, I think that place will be rocking on September 13th. I really do. Especially if Notre Dame beats Miami. And if they beat them by more than 10 points, like, the hype is going to be real going into game 2. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Oops. Come on.
I got to say, though, man, as I'm looking through this schedule.
Yeah, keep going. Purdue, yes. Arkansas,
yes. Boise, yes. NC State, yes. Southern Cal, maybe, but I'm leaning towards yes. Boston College, yes. Navy, yes. Pittsburgh, yes. Syracuse is going to be a bloodbath. I just feel like that's going to happen. And then Stanford's terrible. So, like, it's kind of way over 7.5, in my opinion. As we look at this.
Did you put Southern Cal in the yes?
I put it in the maybe, but I was leaning towards a yes.
Yeah. I'm more in the maybe right now, just because.
And that's fine. Because so even if
they
you
can
did
score some points,
even if you did a maybe there, we're only maybeing 2 games, so that's down to 10. So like, it's
I'd
still
probably
way over
set it.
7.5.
I'd comfortably set it at 8.5. I think.
Okay, I think you might even have a case at 9.5.
Like I said, comfortably
Okay.
set it at 8.5. 9.5 might be the better play. Probably is. You're probably right, because I mean, if we basically say it's Miami, Texas A&M, and Southern Cal, that's your 3 games right there. So 9.5.
Yeah,
you're right.
Cool. So I'm definitely way over the 7.5.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mike. I'm not worried about Boise State. I just not worried about Boise State. If Notre Dame would have played Boise State in the playoff, they would have smoked them. Absolutely smoked them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not worried about them. And they lost their best player. Like I just, we'll see. Just not worried about Boise State.
They'll be solid. You obviously can't overlook a team that just went to the playoffs last year, and Marcus Freeman will have them in the right frame of mind. But I tend to agree. I think that worst case scenario, it would look similar to the Indiana game last year.
That's fair.
And at least on paper, based on what Boise State had last year and what they're bringing back this year, they're not as well set up as Indiana was set up last year.
You're right. Right. And to God's Nuclear ICBM points out, he says he's more concerned with A&M. If you're talking about the quote unquote big 3, and I agree, A&M is the game that I'm most worried about, to be perfectly honest with you, because I just don't like, if Notre Dame goes out and they beat Miami on the road, they're going to be riding high. Sound familiar? You know what I mean? Like, and then they come home. Now, it's not NIU. This is obviously an opponent that you will not overlook, being A&M. But I don't know. That one worries me. That game worries me.
I wouldn't say worry. I mean, it should be a close competitive game. But I think the biggest question, other than the heat all summer long we talked about last year,
I refuse to talk about weather. I'm sorry. I'm not talking about weather.
The other biggest question, like, could Notre Dame match up physically? And look at what Notre Dame did during the college football playoff run when they beat Georgia and Penn State in back-to-back games, 2 teams that did make the playoff, versus Texas A&M, which will still stack up and be a physical team. But like, that question was answered last year with a much, especially on the offensive side of the ball, with a much younger and less experienced offensive line that matched up. Skill talent across the board. Notre Dame's secondary, Notre Dame's linebackers, Notre Dame's wide receivers, and running backs. I think that those are all going to be advantages for the Irish. Like they were in last year's game, and it obviously just turned into a 4-quarter slugfest that Notre Dame was able to escape and got just enough in the end. I think, again, I think it should still be a close competitive game, but Notre Dame has shown they can win those kind of games now.
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to be more about the skill talent. And I think Notre Dame is going to have big advantages there.
Yeah, look, everything you said, I absolutely agree with. It's just like a funny feeling in my gut that just has me worried about A&M. Like, there's no rhyme or reason. You laid out a perfect argument as to why Notre Dame should be very, very good in that game against A&M. I just think Mike Elko is a really good coach, and you just never know like that. And I know that there's no definitive like reasoning behind that. It just makes me nervous. That's all. Notre Dame should be favored in every single game that they play. You know what I mean? And they should win by 10 plus points a lot. It's a good test up front. It's a good test up front. Meaning it's a good test up front at the beginning of the year.
Gotcha. USMA 87 asks confidence that NIL Enforcement Commission will actually be able to punish a violation of the to be established rules.
All right,
if I'm going scale of 1 to 10, I'm going 3.
Yeah,
3
I'm like a 2 is what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Look, the NCAA is terrible about enforcing anything, especially in the moment. And so if the NIL Enforcement Commission is going to be anything like the NCAA, which I assume the NCAA is going to kind of be their governing body over the NIL Enforcement Commission or whatever. I'm not exactly sure how that looks, but if that's the case, you're going to be talking about these people getting punished years down the line. They won't care. Sean, do you think Michigan fans give a crap that Sherrone Moore has to set out a bunch of games because of what happened during the national championship year? They got a title.
They do.
They got a title. They don't care.
Right.
So I have a hard time believing that this will be anything.
Totally agree with that.
They do not.
Mark says Tim Brown, now the commissioner of the Arena Football League, recently said NFL games would be better if we got rid of kickers. What do you say, Vince?
Mark's just trying to poke the bear, is all that he's doing. Now, look, Tim Brown, you are 100% accurate. You don't need kickers in the Arena League because it's like a 50-yard field.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a complete waste of time.
You're always in scoring position. Yeah.
Right. So they do not need kickers in the Arena League. You absolutely need kickers in the NFL. I'm sorry. It would not be a better game at that point because, instead of last-second kicks, you're just doing last-second Hail Marys. Like, I don't like that at all. Like, that doesn't do anything for me. You know what I mean? Because the success rate of a Hail Mary is so low that people aren't going to be on the edge of their seat thinking about whether the team's going to win or lose. You know what I mean? So kickers are very, very important to the game, regardless of the fact that my kid is a kicker. Has nothing to do with it, but kickers are very important to the game. I've always thought that. So, the Buffalo Bills have been like 4-time champs if kickers weren't involved in games. So they're important.
Hold on.
Mark's coming for my family.
You're coming for my family.
Reggie Brooks is on line 1 for you.
Oh, I love Reggie, but he and I can have it out on that one.
You don't come to my family.
I agree. You got to keep kickers. You can't get rid of kickers. Like especially if we're talking about the NFL and in college as well. Like games come down to field goals
all the time.
There's a reason that's part of the game because drives stall.
Yep.
And if you're not trying to kick field goals, then you're basically either just punting or going for it. And I think that there's a lot of strategy that comes into play. And there's, it's like, if anything, I've said this before, I think that they need to devise ways to sort of up the ante for kickers. I've talked about my idea with like a third upright on the goalpost. Like if you center the third upright, you put a pole right down the middle. And if the kicker hits that on the fly, then you get 4 points instead of just 3 points for like more accuracy. Or if you put even like just a target,
like a zone
in the middle.
Yeah. It could be like a digital thing. It doesn't even have to be like a physical thing. Like if you put it down the middle, you get more points than if you get it on the sides. I'd be down for that.
Yeah.
Modernizing the game a little bit. And I mean, these kickers are better now than they've ever been. You know what I mean? Like they're so good that I think that actually adds to the game. So yeah, I would put more emphasis on the kicking game, not less.
Exactly.
Agree with you on that one.
Craig wants to know who on offense and defense will become a household name this season. Well, some people don't want to hear it, but CJ Carr.
Yeah, I know, right?
For starters.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you're the starting quarterback at Notre Dame, you're going to be a household name. Like, I think that's a great one. That's a great one. Defensively,
I think Carter Greathouse is going to challenge Quinn to Samardzija.
Ooh.
Write that down, suckers.
Wow, you're coming hard. I love it. Got my notebook right here.
You going to write that down?
I'm going to write it down. I got my pen. Click, click. No, I God, that would be great if that was the case. You know what I mean? Defensively is a little bit harder. Like I feel like Leonard Moore is kind of a media darling right now. He's getting a lot of preseason, looks and all of those different things on freshman All-America teams and things like that. I don't know that he's a household name. I think he could be, right? I think
True.
Adon Schuler could be in that category. I think he's a really good player. Now he's out of the shadow of Xavier Watts. And so he's got the opportunity and he's doing, all kinds of good things, having camps and all of those kinds of things. So, I think he could be a household name. I think that's it for this year, maybe. I don't know. What do you think defensively?
That's what I'm like going through my brain. It's tough. Because like, are we saying household name as it relates to Notre Dame fans?
right?
or
Or
in
like
general.
nationwide,
Because like even Xavier Watts, as great as he was, I don't feel like he was a household name. Like we obviously all knew who he was and how good he was, but I think it's very tough for a defensive player to become that.
It
So,
is. I mean, he won the Gursky Award. He was the best defensive player in the country as a junior.
yeah,
Or as,
Benjamin Morrison. Again,
right.
like as great as he was. Decaf says Bowen on defense. I think Bowen is going to have a really good year, but I think it's a lot tougher on the defensive side of the ball. So probably I would have to hedge my bet on Leonard Moore because of what you said. Like he started a true freshman last year, and you're going to get 2 more years of him. If he plays even close to what he played last year, he's going to be talked about as an All-American this year. So I would have to go with him. It's probably cheating a little bit, but I agree with what you're saying. I just think it's a lot tougher for a defensive player. Andre, over under 4.5. Is that 4.5? Yeah. Over under 4.5 commits that Notre Dame gets.
I mean, from like this weekend?
I think that's what he's talking about.
Okay.
Like all the intel that I've read from Brian, and that's where I get my recruiting news. Sounds like things went exceptionally well. So I'll just go over. I'll keep the enthusiasm train going.
Right.
And rely on that, and I'll go over.
Yeah, that's where I get my intel as well. I really liked what Brian put on the board. He was very positive about a lot of different things and a lot of different guys, and it feels like Notre Dame is trending in the right direction for a lot of different guys, which is exciting. And so I'll say over as well. I've heard a lot of different numbers thrown out there, so that would be awesome. And I don't know what the timetable is. I know the O'Brien kid is committing on Friday. People seem to think that that's maybe going towards Notre Dame, maybe not, because it's like Notre Dame, Oregon, Clemson. He had a good visit from what I understand. So I don't. He's the only one that I know that there's like a commit date. So sure, more commits for Notre Dame. Take the over. Let's roll. Let's go.
On the subject of commits, Joe wants to know who you'd rather steal a commit from. He says, Michigan and USC not included, which totally takes the whole fun of the thing.
You took the easy ones out, Joe. But the next one for me, and it's not that hard, is Clemson. And the reason being is I think Notre Dame and Clemson are very similar on the recruiting trail, and Notre Dame has a 12-year contract with them.
And they're going to start playing them.
Right. Yeah. So if you steal one from them, now they're going to play them and everything. That Clemson would be
That's
that
why
one for me.
You got to wonder, does apparently Clemson is pushing even harder for Devin Fitzgerald now after, coming out of Fitzgerald's big weekend. I don't know if that push was on before he came to Notre Dame last weekend, but it makes sense that those two programs are going to be pushing each other pretty hard on the recruiting trail when they're playing each other for 12 straight years.
Exactly. That's the thing. Yeah.
And
look, I don't disagree with Ohio State. Some people are putting that out there. Georgia.
I mean, you still a recruit from them. It's going to be an elite recruit. So,
absolutely. And so that's why you pick those. And I totally get that. It's just, this is me being a little petty, but it's a little bit more personal when you steal from like a Clemson or a USC or a Michigan, where obviously Notre Dame's not playing Michigan, but if you're playing USC every year, if you're playing Clemson every year, it's more personal because not only did they steal them from you, but they're going to help us beat you. Like that, it's just a little bit more personal, and I like that.
I'd say Penn State if it's a defensive end or linebacker as well as they've done, with what they've done at that position for quite a while now. It's been a very stacked position for them.
But those are all good answers because those are all really good recruiting schools, and if you can steal anyone from any of those, then let's roll.
Yep. Tommy Guns wants to know: do they still do Rudy in the stadium the night before the home opener? Is it the home opener? Or is it? I thought it was like after the students get back.
Yes,
like after
the students are definitely back.
The student. Well, I mean, isn't it is it before the home opener, or is it like they get back and everyone's in their dorms, and then like that first Friday after everybody's back? I thought that's when they.
That sounds right. Yeah, that sounds right. And I don't know when they come back officially.
I always see a photo of it on social media, so I can't say exactly when it is, but I thought that's kind of when it was.
They do it in the stadium every year. I just don't know when it falls.
Right.
They didn't used to do it in the stadium, obviously, before they had the Jumbotron. They used to do it somewhere else, but they always played it on campus early on in the semester, that kind of a deal. But now that they've had the Jumbotron, they do it in the stadium. They do it every year. I just don't know, like, if there's a set date, prior to like the first home game and all those different things. So I think it's more towards when they move in, to be honest with you. But
That's what I thought. I
Yeah.
thought. All right, a couple from Mark here. One for you. He says,
Mark's coming at me on the other
for
one, so I don't know
Vince, our I'm too frugal to go to the movies aficionado. Which TV B movie franchise is better? Ian Ziering's Sharknado or Steve Guttenberg's Lavalentua? I've never heard of that.
Neither have I. I mean,
I've heard of Sharknado, but I've never watched either of these, so I don't know if you.
Neither have I. I know of Sharknado. I've heard of it. It sounds ridiculous, so I've never watched it. Steve Guttenberg, I know him from like 3 Men and a Baby. So like I don't know.
Wasn't he at Police Academy?
Police Academy, good one. Yeah, he was the star of Police Academy. That's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a really good one. Never heard that one. But
Connor says lava
tarantula. Maybe.
I'm not sure.
I don't have an opinion. I haven't seen them. But here we go.
Mark also says thoughts on ESPN News weekend summer programming: card jitsu, pillow fighting, stone skipping, beach tennis, foot golf, wiffle ball, juggling, axe throwing, kickball, sign spinning. Of those, I know that they're doing pillow fighting. I hadn't heard about the rest. I might watch a little wiffle ball. And
I would watch wiffle ball.
A little of the kickball just to see. I haven't seen a competitive kickball game before.
I would absolutely watch.
When did they put these on? I didn't realize. I had heard about the pillow fighting, but I hadn't heard about any of the rest of these.
I mean, I was a hell of a stone skipper back in the day. I don't know if I could still, do that well, but I was really good at it.
I was a hired gun kickball player.
Oh, kickball.
I was a high draft pick in kickball.
Yeah, me too. I was a big fan of kickball. It also helps when you're playing in PE class and half the kids don't know the rules.
True.
But you always pick out the weakling and you just kick it right over their head, and you're pretty much going to get it in the park home run. So
yeah, I remember high draft pick. We moved, picked last, which is always makes you. It's like the new kid. Nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
And then I kicked it up on the roof of the school, and it's like first pick next time.
That's right. You only make that mistake once, Sean Stiers. That's the thing.
That's right. Golden leg. I don't know what happened. I should have pursued kicking.
Apparently you could have been on ESPN News.
My height, the whole thing
would
have been perfect. But
that's a good point.
Could have been the next Al Del Greco, Sean Landetta. I don't know.
I know you and I would have never met because you would have been hobnobbing with the rich and famous in the NFL.
Would have been a kicking star and wouldn't have had any reason to slum with you.
I know. You're not wrong.
Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
On that note, how could you not be ready for rapid fire? That's my question.
That's right, Craig. Kickball, my glory days. That's right.
Darn right. Kickball is not what it used to be. That's all I got to say.
Do they still play kickball?
Yeah.
Is that still a thing?
Oh, yeah. But now you don't really have bases. They put mats out,
No, I don't even
running into each
other,
then.
Forget it. Marcus Freeman is a guest on the most recent episode of the Joel Klatt podcast. The Fighting Irish head coach had an interesting take on where college football could be headed in the future. Here's what he had to say.
Start adding in TV money. You start adding in scheduling. There's a lot of money involved with college football. And there might come a time where there might be an outside entity that takes college football away from the NCAA. I don't know, right? The future's uncertain, I say. But I could see a college football system where everybody's independent and somebody else is very similar to the NFL. Somebody else is scheduling the games when you play each other, and then all of a sudden it's not based off TV deals or with your conference anymore, right? And it'll be based off regional location and things like that.
Okay, so Vince, you're kind of making a face. Maybe I know where you're going with this. Would college football be better off with what Freeman is describing there, where, it's basically more like a pro setup than what we have right now in college football?
5 years ago, I would have said hell no. I just like the pageantry and the tradition of college football. I would have said no. But with the way things are trending, the way things are going with conference expansion and, to the point of our Big Ten discussion earlier, right? They're not a regional conference anymore. They are a nationwide conference. The SEC is pretty much nationwide, it feels like, anymore. Like the ACC is nationwide. So, what are we doing? That makes no sense for any other sport not named football. Mm-hmm. And so I'm actually on board. Just peel football out of the equation. Let them go do their own thing. And obviously the money will funnel back into the schools. And so you're still paying for all the other sports, which is fine. And then you go back to regional conferences with everybody else.
Yeah,
makes more sense than anybody can understand at this point. Just do it. I'm fine with it at this point. Just do it.
That's the thing, is what he's describing is old conferences, like
I know,
the Pac-8, the Big 8,
seriously,
the SWAC,
or like we're going full circle here.
That's right. That's what he's describing. Shrunken down conferences, playing more regionalized, and especially considering we do have a playoff that's already expanded once and is going to expand again. I think that you would be much better off with a system like this, where, you're playing a little bit more, regionalized in focus, but then you also make kind of a couple of different trips, out to maybe each coast or something like that. And I think it makes a lot more sense to do it that way. They've pushed it, as he said, TV money is obviously driving this thing. And if you sort of centralized it like this, like he's describing, there's going to be a big pot of gold basically for everybody. There's going to be big TV money for everybody. The only question at that point is, the Power Four as we know it right now would obviously survive. Of those schools, who maybe gets left out, and what happens to the group of 6 now type programs, the MACs and the Mountain West and those kind of conferences. Would they be able to survive in a system like that?
Right, because they get their money from going on the road and getting their butts kicked, right? So that's where they get a lot of their money, and it makes total sense. They would just have to have a new normal. They'd have to figure it out, you know what I mean? And there's going to be those quote unquote bubble teams that might get left out if they do 50 teams or 60 teams or whatever, and I'm sure they're going to have a problem with it, and I get it, but somebody's got to get left out, and then they just have to make their living in the Mountain West or the MAC or the Pac-12 or whatever it ends up being, you know what I mean? So it's going to be a new normal for everybody at that point. And they're just going to figure it out.
Toonsa says, what about the contracts the schools have with the current conferences? Are they going to buy them out? This wouldn't happen tomorrow. This is a longer term play, is what he's talking about. And I know that there's been talk about super conferences and all that different kind of stuff. That's kind of part of what he's describing here as well. But I think we're at a minimum 10 years away from that. That is the soonest I think something as drastic as this happens. And again, if it gets to that point where you blow it up and you start from scratch, basically, with what Marcus Freeman was describing there and what some other people have described in different configurations, then in that case, again, it's much more like the NFL, where you have an AFC package that is predominantly CBS. You have an NFC package that is predominantly Fox. But like all the TV networks are going to be involved in this, and they're all going to be paying large sums of money.
Yes,
and you're like, it's all going to go into a centralized pool, and everybody's going to be sharing in that. So it would look much more centralized, like the NFL, with multiple TV contracts to all the TV networks that would be involved in that kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. There would be so much money being thrown around if that happens.
Oh, I know.
It's going to be a free-for-all. It's going to be an absolute free-for-all. And every school will be happy that they did it, because they will make so much more money than they're making now.
Mm-hmm. Freeman and Joel Klatt recorded that podcast inside the Notre Dame locker room, and Klatt shared some of his thoughts on that setting.
To break it to all of you out there, but we are actually sitting in, this is my singular favorite spot in all of college football. This is the locker room at Notre Dame Stadium.
I appreciate that. We're going to make sure we get that message out there a little bit more. You know?
I'm sure. It's incredible. You've mixed and obviously they did this before you were the head coach, but mixing the old with the new and going out the door and down the tunnel and all the history, and yet it's a modern program that is excelling. Like all of that, I walk into this building and it is just quintessentially college football. Yeah. So it's really cool.
All right, Vince. So Joel Klatt, very in on the modernization mixed with the tradition of Notre Dame. That modernization aspect of it didn't happen overnight. How important do you think that is in today's college football world that Notre Dame caught up in that aspect?
Crucial. It's 100% crucial. Like they absolutely needed to have that done. I mean, they've got one of the best indoor facilities, obviously. They're putting in the new building that's going to be state-of-the-art. But you also have to have a touch of the history, the tradition, because that's what Notre Dame is. You can't focus on one and leave the other one behind. There does have to be a marriage to that. And I think the locker room is a perfect example of that, right? Because it's still got the brick. It's still got that old feeling, all that, but they still got mood lighting in there and flat screen TVs, and all that kind of stuff. So like it is kind of the perfect marriage of everything that Notre Dame wants to be. They want to be a team and a program that is built on tradition, but they're also on the cutting edge. And that's exactly what they need to be. And people forget they only use that locker room on game day. Like the locker room they're in every day is across the street over at the Goog, and they're building another one at the new building. They spend way more time over there than they do in the game day locker room. You know what I mean? So
absolutely. And
I don't know if that's commonplace for schools. You know what I mean? Because you always see like these amazing locker rooms that the teams have and stuff. Are those their game day locker rooms? Are those their practice locker rooms? Are they one and the same? Like, I don't know the answer to that because I'm only privy to Notre Dame, but they're only in there 6 times a year, which is kind of wild.
Yeah, but I agree with what you're saying. It is absolutely crucial that they caught up. And like, I was thinking about this when I heard Joel Klatt say this and just how impressed he is, because for so long, basically the attitude from the Notre Dame side, especially I think higher up, was we're Notre Dame. Like, that's all we have to sell. We don't need all these bells and whistles and all that stuff. You've talked about this before. Think about, this was 2004 when you and I started doing radio together. Mm-hmm. And the coaches' press conferences, Bob Davie and Tyrone Willingham, Notre Dame didn't have the setup, other than like their post-game press conference type stuff. Like the weekly Notre Dame football head coach's press conference was out of WNDU, the TV station, which is obviously, just right next to.
It's on campus technically, but it's on the other side, like way over by St. Mary's and Holy Cross.
That's where you did that. They didn't have the Goog yet. And then, they build the Goog. And so that, that takes a step in the right direction, but there's still a lot of things lacking, again, like in terms of modernization. Now, the weight room, is way better than what they had before.
Oh,
and, the facilities obviously started to improve, but like the Campus Crossroads project, when they brought that in and they expanded the stadium, I know a lot of people didn't like that, but they literally, going back to, pre-2005, when Charlie Weiss started doing press conferences inside the Goog, like they've got full like TV stations and side stations inside the Notre Dame football stadium now, in like classroom space, and the ability to offer different majors and different classes that weren't offered before, that all are a part of this stuff. And then, like you said, all the other facilities that are coming along as well. So they've just it's been 25 years, so that you would hope that they would, but they have done just a great job of balancing both the tradition and, modern advances in technology and everything else. And I think that they're really in a sweet spot. It feels like right now with the stuff that they're doing.
I agree. I mean, the building that they're putting up, the new building, I can't remember the name of it, something Family Hall. But anyway, the new build, it looks exactly like all the other buildings on campus. I mean, so they're keeping that type of tradition, all of those different things. And so I like that. One of the reasons I like Notre Dame is because of the callback to the tradition and all of those different things. And it's what a lot of fans like about Notre Dame. And so you want to hold on to that. You want to keep that. But you also have to be on the cutting edge. I mean, that's how, look, Marcus Freeman is an amazing recruiter, and he's got amazing recruiters on his staff, and he's got a great recruiting network set up and all these different things. But if you're telling me that it doesn't matter that they've got a beautiful indoor facility and they've got a beautiful locker room and they're building a brand new building that's going to be football only, if you're telling me that doesn't matter, then you're not really telling yourself the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
All of those things together.
But there is a balance now between what you need in facilities and how much has to go into NIL. Maybe revenue sharing helps kind of balance that out again. Yeah. But it's a lot different. It's just night and day different.
Oh my gosh. Football locker room used to be in the
I remember
center.
what is the Chivarelli Lounge now?
Yeah.
You know what that is, right? Like the Shiver.
Yeah, it's where we used to do the press conferences.
That used to be where the post-game press conferences is. And what that was just like a little side room that had, like one of those collapsible partitions in the middle that just looked like your run-of-the-mill room. And sometimes they would do some post-practice stuff there, but they have obviously fixed that up and they're able to host people.
It's strictly for recruiting now.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all it is.
Exactly. Well, every once in a while, like they've done a couple press conferences there. Like they did that soccer press conference there last summer.
Okay.
They did Sean Stifler's introduction there. That's where they
non-football
did his press conference.
things.
Yeah.
But it makes sense that it's also the recruiting lounge because it's connected to the locker room. Like it's on the correct side of the tunnel to connect to the locker room. The new press conference, quote unquote, area is now on the visitors side.
But again, because that's where literally, like the locker room is on the other side and they would bring the players in from that back room, those back doors, into that room.
Right.
And and it is right there. And I'm sure Joel Klatt probably walked through the Chivarelli Lounge.
Sure.
When
I'm sure that was there was some serious butt kissing going on there by Joel Klatt. Now maybe he's being honest. Maybe he's being honest.
I mean, it's his podcast.
You're right.
It's like I'll take him at his word on that.
He knows what he has to say to get another one-on-one with Marcus Freeman in the future. All right.
That's right. The challenge becomes when he's interviewing Dabo and he doesn't give Dabo the same kind of compliment.
Right.
So.
Here's what I will say. The backdrop of the locker room, the way they had it set up for that interview, because I did watch that interview on the way home from Hillsdale on Monday. Yeah, so I saw the whole interview. Just the mood lighting in the back and the locker room. I mean, they had it set up real nicely. There's no doubt about that. I mean, that's the thing. That is college football, right? Like that. That's college football, man. So it was awesome.
So Grayson McKeo has McKeo. I don't know exactly how you say his last name.
Got me on that one.
He committed to Notre Dame today. Breaking news during the show. The offensive lineman. It was between Notre Dame, Penn State, and Texas. So we were talking earlier in the show about how many commits they would get. They get their first commit of the uncommitted guys who visited Notre Dame last weekend. And that big weekend, they got literally and figuratively a big one in Grayson. So big news for Notre Dame there.
Yep. And I do believe, based on the chats that I'm getting, there will be a show here momentarily. So kind of stay tuned for that. It's where you got to hit that notification bell so that you know when things are happening on the spur of the moment. And here's what else I'll say, because we are talking about recruiting, and you're not going to hear a lot of that on this show, but there's going to be a few shows here, impromptu style, over the next week and a half, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is, when this crop of kids that were on campus at Notre Dame, if they decide to choose Notre Dame, there's going to be shows. So
embracing all that tradition and modernization while they're there.
Right. That's right. So you got to have that notification bell clicked if you want to know when those recruiting or those commitment shows happen. So come on now.
Okay. One final thought from Marcus Freeman with Joel Klatt. He talked about, you guessed it, the future of Notre Dame USC.
The thing about rivalry games is nobody cares what the record is.
That's right.
You win that game, you view that season as a success.
And Michigan last year with Ohio State.
Amen. So for us, one of them that is continuously brought up here in the last month or so is the rivalry we have with USC. Before I ever got to Notre Dame, there's memories I have in my head of great plays in the USC Notre Dame rivalry. And I think it's important to continue that rivalry. And so if they ask my opinion, I want to continuously play USC every year, and it takes both parties to tangle, right? And it's got to fit both institutions. And, they're in a conference, we're not. When do we play? All those different things. But I think it's important that we continue to have this rivalry.
So, Vince, honestly, I don't even know what to ask about this one. I just felt like he talked about USC, so we, pretty much had to play it. We've said our piece pretty much on this thing.
Right.
Well, I don't know. What do you think?
Here's my takeaway.
Okay.
Here's my takeaway. So was a couple of weeks ago, we had the sit down with Marcus Freeman and around the conference table and all of that. And obviously this topic came up, and he very clearly said, if it's up to me, we play this every year. I don't care where, and I don't care when, right? He was very clear on that. We're 2 weeks removed from that, and he's still saying the same thing over and over again. So he is doubling down on the fact, like, if this comes out that this series is getting canceled, it won't be because of Notre Dame. Like, and I'm cool with that. He only has so much power as the head coach when it comes to
Good
scheduling.
point. Yeah.
But he's doubling down. He's saying we want this.
Every time he gets a chance, he's saying it. I'm guessing, it'll probably be within the next few weeks, maybe a month from now or so, when they do that, like the Sports Center Blitz and all that different stuff, when they pack up and go out to Connecticut, New York, and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure it'll come up at that point, and I'm sure that he'll say the exact same thing once again, which is good for Notre Dame. Like Marcus Freeman doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on, we want to keep playing USC. Just say it every chance you get the opportunity to.
Agreed. Love it.
We talked all about some of Notre Dame's top plays of the last 25 years on yesterday's show, and Domer Grizz said on our Champions Lounge that the top plays topic got him thinking about the worst plays of the last 25 years. He nominated 2. Pat Dillingham, when he said, "Here, you take it, just don't hurt me," to the Boston College linebacker en route to like 7 turnovers the week after beating number 1 Florida State, is what he said. He said it was deja vu all over again. I will correct one thing. 1, there weren't 7 turnovers. I looked. 2, Florida State was ranked 11th the week before. I had forgotten that it was the week before Boston College. It was like basically like, it was deja vu all over again to an extent, with 1993. But that is a very good nominee. 10 men on the field against Ohio State.
That's
he said
a big
as well.
one.
I guess my question is, like, do we really want to go down this road? Like, can you think of, like, do you want to subject yourself to the misery of trying to think of the worst Notre Dame plays of the last 25 years?
Well, if we're talking about the ones that just stick with you in the negative way, right? Bush push comes up. The ending of that Michigan game comes up. There's a lot of heartbreak when it comes, Boston College, 93.
The Mario Manningham Michigan game. Do you remember that when he got 3 touchdown passes against Notre Dame? I think you were there with me for that one. Yeah.
Yep. So look, we don't want to go down this road because
Little
there's
Giants,
so much positive. Oh, that was
Giants
awful.
At Michigan State.
Listen.
And by the way, like you talk about, we started the show about officials screwing up a call with David Grimes and that, overturned catch at Stanford. Michigan State still should have been flagged for illegal contact. They were blocking downfield.
Yes.
When the ball was in the air, before the pass was even thrown, and while the ball was in the air, they were blocking downfield on that play. That never should have been.
There's so many wrong things about that play. It was delayed game. There's all kinds of issues. And then, Michigan State's head coach had a heart attack that night. Remember that?
Yeah.
So I will not say what I wanted to say, but that was an awful game. That was an awful ending to that game. It's an awful ending. And I believe it was Zibikowski that fell over. He just tripped. He fell over. Like, it's awful. It's awful.
I don't think Zibikowski was playing
Was it not
game.
Zibikowski? It was
was
one of the defensive backs just
that
fell
was a
over.
Brian Kelly game. That was a Brian
Was
Kelly
it?
game.
Okay,
Yeah.
my bad. Just bad.
Harrison
It's
Smith.
just bad. Harrison Smith. Thank you. Look at
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, from the cheap seats, here comes Brian Driscoll with the answer.
Well, I'm
I
listening to
didn't
you
even see
guys'
him there.
show, and you're depressing the crap out of me with all these games. So I wanted to come in and add some good news. Grayson McHugh just committed to Notre Dame. They beat
Right.
out
Q,
Penn
thank
State.
you for the pronunciation.
So
I had no idea how to say it.
We will go live tonight at 7 p.m. Just wanted to jump in real quick. Or whenever you guys are done. But 7 will be the target.
We'll be
but
done
if you guys
before
go,
then.
go over, we'll go. But we're going to go live at 7 o'clock tonight, breaking it down. So
Love
just
it.
wanted to get some good news in there with the depressing questions.
See, that's what I said.
Like,
I asked him if we even wanted to go down the road of like all-time worst plays.
yes.
Little Giants
Yes.
popped into my head right away.
Yes,
So,
one of the all-time worst calls. Armando Allen was not out of bounds on that screen call in 2011 or 2009 against Michigan. You guys remember that when he scored that 50-plus yard touchdown in 2009 at Michigan at the Big House,
Oh.
and he scored, and they went and reviewed it and ruled him out, and it was very clear that he did not step out. So that was a terrible.
There's just a lot of heartbreak in the history of being a Notre Dame fan. That's all there is to it.
Not right now, baby. Right now it's going pretty good. Right now,
Right
it's
now.
going pretty good.
Recent history, I'm a big fan. So
that's what I'm saying. Why do you even want to mess up the mojo and talk about the bad stuff at this point?
Because some Notre Dame fans just misery loves company. You know, it's like from that denomination of, I guess, Protestant Catholics or whatever you want to call them, that just like they whip themselves. Or I can't feel good. I just gotta feel bad. So there you go. But we will go live after this amazing midweek mailbag to break that one down. But yeah, I think it was Harrison Smith that fell.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yep. Makes more sense. Yes.
Awful. All right.
Thank you, Brian Driscoll.
We're back.
Fill in the blank. Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia had some interesting comments about the Big Ten on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast this week. Pavia said, quote, "You want to play with the best. You don't want to play with the Big Ten. You ignore those calls. The SEC, it's week after week, you're going to get beat on. The Big Ten, you're not going to get beat on with the Purdue's, Nebraskas," end quote. And Vince,
Wow.
that's blank.
That's look, I'm sure Diego Pavia had some options this offseason because of the season that he had last year. And
apparently
I'm sure
he had 4 million options, but he decided to stay at
Vanderbilt, huh?
Instead. Yeah.
Okay, Diego. You know what? Maybe he's just loyal to Vanderbilt and he's loyal to Clark Lee and the all of everything that they've got going on down there. But that shot's fired at the Big Ten, man. Like you had some shots fired. And here's the other thing. Vanderbilt obviously had some upsets last year, and they're going to have to play those teams again this year. And you want to talk about getting beat on. I hope for his sake that his teammates and him can weather the storm of the SEC this coming season. But to his point, though, the bottom end of the Big Ten, the bottom half of the Big Ten is not good. It's just not good football, in my opinion. And it's better than the bottom half of the SEC. So shots fired, yes. Accurate.
You think the bottom of the Big Ten is better than the bottom half of the SEC?
I'm saying the bottom half of the Big Ten is not as good as the bottom half of the SEC. So it's shots fired, but I think they're accurate shots. That's the thing. So
no, I think that he is exactly right about this because, again, look, we've gone through and we've looked at Michigan's schedule and Penn State's schedule and USC schedule and Oregon's schedule. Like, they're not playing the murderer's row that Lincoln Riley and USC are making these Big Ten schedules out to be. And like Brett Bielema is saying, well, Diego Pavia is just saying what somebody told him to say, or he's repeating what he heard somebody else say. And it's like, okay, Illinois, you're a little bit better. Brett Bielema has Illinois football playing as well as they have probably played in a couple of decades, but you've got to go out and prove it still. But there's still really, it comes down to like what, 3.5, 4 teams at the top of the Big Ten, and then there's everybody else. So it's definitely not nearly, what most of these schools try to make those Big Ten schedules out to be. They're just not nearly as tough. I do think that there is, the SEC can be fairly top heavy at times as well, but at the same time, I do think there's more overall depth in the SEC. And I mean, he definitely knows what it's like to, to take some pounding from some SEC teams since he played them last year. But you're right.
Yeah.
He's gonna get some shots from him again this year now. Because like there's a bigger target on Vanderbilt's back after the season they had last year.
100%. And so I hope they are successful, because Vanderbilt winning games last year was awesome. It was a fun ride to watch. You know what I mean? And so I hope that they're just as successful, if not more so, this year. I think that would be great. And it would back up the fact that the bottom half of the SEC is better than the bottom half of the Big Ten. It would back that up. You know what I mean? So, look, the hardest part about the Big Ten schedule for USC is the fact that they have to get on a plane and go there. Yeah, that's the hardest part. It's not the actual game itself. It's just flying to wherever you need to fly to. You know, like, and even that. I mean, these guys fly in the lap of luxury, man. Like I don't know. I'm not feeling too bad for them.
There's been a mini Stephen A. Smith controversy going on for the last few days after he was caught playing solitaire on his phone during the NBA Finals game between the Pacers and Thunder the other day. So, big deal or little deal for Smith to be gaming on his phone during a game he's covering?
This is a tough one for me because, look, it's the NBA Finals, so you probably should be a little bit more locked in. Whether you think the game is boring or it's a team that you're rooting for, you shouldn't be rooting anyway. You're part of the media. But he has to talk about the game. So, like, I feel like he should be more locked in. Now, I will say, we have been to Notre Dame games that have been brutally boring. And we're covering the game and we're doing
How
things.
locked in are you over the course of an entire football game when you're there?
I have graded papers during football games. I have chatted with friends during football game. Like,
giving yourself away now.
I know. So, like, I don't want to be the pot calling the kettle black. But you know where I was dialed in at? The national championship game that Notre Dame was playing in. So I feel like the gravity of the game has to come into play here. So I can't give him a complete pass because it's the NBA freaking finals. You should be a little bit more locked in, Stephen A. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and they had him kind of in an overflow, seat. It was actually like a seat in the arena. It was like in the arena, but it was like, so it was in the stands, so it wasn't like he was on press row and somebody behind him, had it. And I've heard conflicting reports. Some have said it was while the game it was going on. He's tried to say it was during a commercial break or, it's like, you're definitely not going to get the full context though, when you're looking at a photo of Stephen A. Smith holding his phone. But I mean, your point is very valid. Like anyone who's in the media who's covered a game, I would say most people at some point or another have done something that's not related to the game that they're covering, especially if the game, like if it starts getting out of hand a little bit, your mind starts to wander from time to time.
And look, Tommy's saying he doesn't blame him. It's the NBA and blah, blah, blah. That's his job. His job is to pay attention. His job is to discuss the NBA. I get it from a fan standpoint, Tommy. I'm not watching the NBA finals. I'll be the first one to admit it. I'd rather do anything else than watch the NBA finals right now. That's not the point though. That's his job. So like he should be a little bit more locked in than he was. Like that's the thing for me. Come on, dude.
We're all distracted by our phones though.
Oh, 100%.
That's the bigger issue. I think is like who among us can say that we're not more addicted to our phones than we probably need to be.
I will be the first one to admit it. They are a necessity and they are also a burden, right? Like if I didn't have a phone, I couldn't do my day job because it's constantly emails and chats and all these different things about school stuff. But I'm still walking down the hall, checking Facebook too. Like, so I'll be the first one to admit it. You know what I mean? So they are a necessity and an issue. So
Tommy says he's not. I don't know if he put an LOL at the end because I do, like when Tommy's driving down the road, he says he's not addicted to his phone, but he still finds a way, to type stuff in the chat for us during the show. So
you're watching us on the phone too, I believe.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a great addiction to have, by the way. Just saying.
I'm not saying it's bad that you're listening / watching, but so there were multiple skirmishes in the Indiana Fever's win over the Connecticut Sun last night. Guess what? It involved Caitlin Clark. Shocker. Right?
Everybody wants a piece.
Multiple technical fouls dished out when J.C. Sheldon mixed it up with Clark, and then former Notre Dame star Marina Mabry, who plays for Connecticut, Sheldon's teammate, got in the mix. She kind of bumped Clark to the floor, and then later Indiana's Sophie Cunningham had a hard foul on Sheldon to keep her from scoring on a layup. So the NBA or the WNBA, no suspensions of any kind were leveled after all this. So what do you think? I don't know how much of the highlights maybe you've got to see.
I saw
with the busy day that you had. Was it too much or just good hard basketball?
You know, the WNBA needs to be talked about, right? If you're a WNBA executive or whatever, you want your league in the conversation, right? And they're in the conversation because of this. And so I don't really have a huge problem with it. Now, look, I watched the little scuttlebutt. Number one, Caitlin Clark flopped twice, in my opinion, during that little scuffle, right? Now,
I mean, it got poked in the eye, it looked like.
Is that what it okay.
That's what it looked like to me. Like Sheldon, it looked like it wasn't like intentional.
Well, it wasn't intentional.
She had her hand at it, and it looked like she poked her in the eye, and that's
right.
That's
now, Mabry coming up, she bumped her, but she didn't have to fall to the floor. Like, that was a little much. Now, the hard foul, that was legit. Like, that was a legit hard foul. There was no way she was making that layup. She got tackled. Like, there's no way.
And that was the Sophie Cunningham play.
Yes. Yeah. There was no way that was going to happen. Now, I don't really have an issue with the sequence of events from that game. I have an issue with some of the things that other players are doing to Caitlin Clark, like just randomly, like just body checking her and doing some other things. So I do have a problem with that kind of stuff. This stuff, I don't have a problem with it. Mabry was coming to the defense of her player and like,
well, see, and that's, like they brought fine. Like the Fever brought in Sophie Cunningham for a specific purpose, and that was for stuff like last night, because
there you go.
Her teammates last year when this crap was going on weren't sticking up for her. And so they brought in Sophie Cunningham to be the enforcer. And that's exactly what she did. When she had the opportunity, her team was winning. And the player who started the whole thing, Sophie Cunningham, said, you're going to the floor, and then got right in her face afterwards. And the whole avalanche, like they brought in a player who would stand up and basically be Caitlin Clark's enforcer.
I love it.
Like, I've got no problem with that. I've got no problem with Marina Mabry sticking up for her teammate as well. The exact same kind of role for Connecticut. It's just competitive players going back and forth. I've got no problem with it. Ultimately, it's, it makes the whole thing a little bit more entertaining. I realize maybe the league probably doesn't like some of it, but Stephanie White, the Fever head coach, is called out the officiating. Like, if you're going to let little things go, it's going to come back on you.
Yes.
Ultimately. And you're going to have bigger skirmishes like this in the long run.
And it's been like that in officiating, whether it's football, basketball, whatever. It's been like that since day one, more so in basketball. Like, if you start calling some ticky-tack stuff early, you're kind of setting the tone for what's going to be allowed. Like, that's what you got to do, right? If you let stuff go, then things are going to get let go even longer, right? So I think that I have no problem with the sequence from last night, if that's when it occurred. No problem whatsoever.
Last night.
Yeah, there are a lot of cheap shots going around, though. Those I have an issue with. Now, again, I'm seeing highlights, so I'm not seeing the context of those cheap shots, right? But it feels like there's more cheap shots going on in other times of games. But that particular scenario, I have no problem with it whatsoever. I like a little, just get after it, man. Get physical. There's nothing wrong with that.
I agree. So you had some difficulties the last 24 hours. Were you able to finish the town?
Yes.
Your thoughts?
That was a must finish, because full disclosure, right? You guys gave me a hard time about this. It was on Netflix. So I was like, you know what? I got to sit down and I've got to watch it. And so I got through the first half before the 1:00 show yesterday, before the big show. And then obviously it went from that one to this one. And so I didn't have a chance to finish it. So I finished it last night before the storm. And it's a good movie. It is like I was not expecting the ending, obviously. Yeah. I don't know. It was a very interesting ending. It certainly wasn't a happy ending by any stretch of the imagination, but
apparently there was an alternate ending that they screened where Affleck dies, and test audiences hated it, so they changed the ending around.
I mean, I guess I would watching the movie. I don't know how he didn't die. like
a lot of bullets flying, man.
Woo, man, and like a lot of automatic bullets flying. You know what I mean? And so the fact that they were able to, I don't want to give like a ton away, but apparently I'm the only one that hasn't seen it. So
well, the movie is 15 years old at this point, so
it's whatever. But I don't know how they got out of a couple of other skirmishes that they were able to get out of, switching cars and doing all these different things. Like there's no way they should have gotten out of the one where they were dressed like nuns. They had no business getting out of that one, and somehow they did, right? And then of course they're robbing the Red Sox. Like that's a ballsy move, man. Like this.
The Lindas want you to open the door.
That was great. The Lindas. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that was it was, I mean, I was entertained, and that's the biggest part of it, right? I was entertained.
It lived up to the hype.
Those guys were very intelligent with the way they did things, Yeah. Just another guy being led by his heart ends up getting him in the end.
You know what your problem is, Vince?
What's that?
You think you're better than people.
We're gonna fight.
Jeremy Renner just had so many good lines.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he was
Joe chiming in the tone blue. Yeah, whatever.
I thought it was good.
Nothing's gonna get 100%, but
yeah. Well,
I thought like a movie like that felt like it was up your alley. So that's why I was shocked that you had never seen it. So
it was good. I enjoyed it. And I thought the acting was really good in it. Had a lot of like, I don't know. My favorite character might have been the John Hamm character. I thought he was hilarious. Probably not intentionally so. But like he was focused on getting this thing accomplished and didn't necessarily follow the rules all the time, which I kind of dig too. So
that's true. Claire, we are a national organization.
That's right. That's good. So it was a good movie. I appreciate the recommendation on that one. That was a good one.
All right. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Glad you enjoyed it. Vince in on the town. So check that one off. Check the box off. Now, if you would just see the Bourne Identity.
I know. I really want to see those too.
That one's hard to find though. Like
I know.
Because I haven't it only like comes around at certain times on like the different, maybe because they're releasing the latest Bourne. I think it might be in November or something like that.
So
November
some
or
streaming company will bring it up.
So maybe like all the others,
right?
Will because they've been showing the last one, which was called Jason Bourne, which is probably the worst of all the ones that they've done. But the very first one, I think you would. I think if you watch that, you'd be in on the rest of them. So
I'm ready. It's a 2002, so it's probably time that I sit down and watch that one.
Catch up.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's going to do it for tonight. Don't forget, Brian's got the live show coming up at 7 o'clock on the YouTube stream. Grayson, see, I already forgot how to say his last name again.
McHugh? Did he say McHugh?
McHugh,
I think I said McHugh, yeah.
Yep.
It's a lot easier than it looks. I'll just say that.
Yeah, Grayson McHugh, committing offensive lineman. So Brian's going to be breaking that down at 7 o'clock live show tonight. Hit the like button before you leave. We always appreciate it, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.